Unplugged in, the inauguration of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris.
So help you God?
So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. President.
The 46th American president is sworn in on the steps of a scarred U.S. Capitol, guarded by thousands of troops around an empty city deserted after protest and pandemic. American history is made with the first woman inaugurated as vice president. Joe Biden lays out his vision for his presidency. Unplugged in, the inauguration of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Hello and welcome to Plugged In. I'm Greta Van Susteren, reporting from Washington, D.C. Unlike many other countries, the United States does not give, but lends powers to its leaders, and it is loaned in 4-year increments. And at noon on January 20th, that loan power was invested in Joseph R. Biden, who was inaugurated as the new U.S. president. At age 78, Biden is America's oldest president. Also sworn in, Kamala Harris as vice president, becoming the first woman to hold that position. The new president delivered his inauguration speech at the U.S. Capitol, where 2 weeks earlier there was an attack on the Capitol. Ordinarily, there are crowds for the president's inaugural speech, but not this time. This time, the National Mall is guarded by the National Guard troops standing by to repel the risk of a repeated attack. All this amid a coronavirus pandemic and sluggish U.S. economy. President Biden laid out his path forward, calling on all Americans to work together.
This is America's day. This is democracy's day. A day of history and hope, of renewal and resolve. Through a crucible for the ages, America has been tested anew, and America has risen to the challenge. Today, we celebrate the triumph not of a candidate, but of a cause, the cause of democracy. The people, the will of the people has been heard, and the will of the people has been heeded. We've learned again that democracy is precious. Democracy is fragile. And at this hour, my friends, democracy has prevailed. So now, on this hallowed ground where just a few days ago, violence sought to shake the Capitol's very foundation, we come together as one nation, under God, indivisible, to carry out the peaceful transfer of power as we have for more than 2 centuries. As we look ahead in our uniquely American way, restless, bold, optimistic, and set our sights on the nation we know we can be and we must be. I thank my predecessors of both parties for their presence here today. I thank them from the bottom of my heart. And I know the resilience of our Constitution and the strength of our nation, as does President Carter, who I spoke with last night, who cannot be with us today, but whom we salute for his lifetime in service. I've just taken the sacred oath each of those patriots have taken, the oath first sworn by George Washington. But the American story depends not on any one of us, not on some of us, but on all of us, on we the people who seek a more perfect union. This is a great nation. We are good people. And over the centuries, through storm and strife, in peace and in war, we've come so far, but we still have far to go. We'll press forward with speed and urgency, for we have much to do in this winter of peril and significant possibilities. Much to repair, much to restore, much to heal, much to build, and much to gain. Few people in our nation's history have been more challenged or found a time more challenging or difficult than the time we're in now. Once-in-a-century virus that silently stalks the country. It's taken as many lives in 1 year as America lost in all of World War II. Millions of jobs have been lost. Hundreds of thousands of businesses closed. A cry for racial justice, some 400 years in the making, moves us. The dream of justice for all will be deferred no longer. A cry for survival comes from the planet itself, a cry that can't be any more desperate or any more clear. And now, a rise of political extremism, white supremacy, domestic terrorism, that we must confront and we will defeat. To overcome these challenges, to restore the soul and secure the future of America, requires so much more than words. It requires the most elusive of all things in a democracy: unity. Uniting to fight the foes we face: anger, resentment and hatred, extremism, lawlessness, violence, disease, joblessness, and hopelessness. With unity, we can do great things, important things. We can right wrongs. We can put people to work in good jobs. We can teach our children in safe schools. We can overcome the deadly virus. We can reward work and rebuild the middle class and make health care secure for all. We can deliver racial justice, and we can make America once again the leading force for good in the world. I know speaking of unity can sound to some like a foolish fantasy these days. I know the forces that divide us are deep and they are real. But I also know they are not new. Our history has been a constant struggle between the American ideal that we're all are created equal and the harsh, ugly reality that racism, nativism, fear, demonization have long torn us apart. The battle is perennial, and victory is never assured. Through Civil War, the Great Depression, World War, 9/11, through struggle, sacrifice, and setbacks, our better angels have always prevailed. In each of these moments, enough of us have come together to carry all of us forward. And we can do that now. History, faith, and reason show the way of unity. We can see each other not as adversaries, but as neighbors. We can treat each other with dignity and respect. We can join forces, stop the shouting, and lower the temperature. For without unity, there is no peace, only bitterness and fury. No progress, only exhausting outrage. No nation, only a state of chaos. This is our historic moment of crisis and challenge, and unity is the path forward. And we must meet this moment as the United States of America. If we do that, I guarantee you we will not fail. We have never, ever, ever, ever failed in America when we've acted together. And so today, at this time, in this place, let's start afresh, all of us. Let's begin to listen to one another again, hear one another, see one another, show respect to one another. Politics doesn't have to be a raging fire, destroying everything in its path. Every disagreement doesn't have to be a cause for total war. And we must reject the culture in which facts themselves are manipulated and even manufactured. My fellow Americans, we have to be different than this. America has to be better than this. And I believe America is so much better than this. Just look around. Here we stand in the shadow of the Capitol Dome, as was mentioned earlier, completed amid the Civil War, when the Union itself was literally hanging in the balance. Yet we endured. we prevail. Here we stand, looking out on the great mall where Dr. King spoke of his dream. Here we stand where 108 years ago, at another inaugural, thousands of protesters tried to block brave women marching for the right to vote. And today, we mark the swearing in of the first woman in American history elected to national office, Vice President Kamala Harris. Don't tell me things can't change. To all those who supported our campaign, I'm humbled by the faith you've placed in us. To all those who did not support us, let me say this. Hear me out as we move forward. Take a measure of me and my heart. And if you still disagree, so be it. That's democracy. That's America. The right to dissent peaceably within the guardrails of our republic is perhaps this nation's greatest strength. Yet hear me clearly. Disagreement must not lead to disunion. And I pledge this to you. I will be a president for all Americans. All Americans. And I promise you, I will fight as hard for those who did not support me as for those who did. Many centuries ago, St. Augustine, a saint of my church, wrote that a people was a multitude defined by the common objects of their love. Defined by the common objects of their love. What are the common objects we as Americans love that define us as Americans? I think we know. Opportunity, security, liberty, dignity, respect, honor, and yes, the truth. Recent weeks and months have taught us a painful lesson. There is truth and there are lies. Lies told for power and for profit. And each of us has a duty and a responsibility as citizens, as Americans, and especially as leaders. Leaders who have pledged to honor our Constitution and protect our nation, to defend the truth and defeat the lies. Look, I understand that many of my fellow Americans view the future with fear and trepidation. I understand they worry about their jobs. I understand, like my dad, they lay at bed at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering, can I keep my health care? Can I pay my mortgage? Thinking about their families, about what comes next. I promise you, I get it. But the answer is not to turn inward, to retreat into competing factions, distrusting those who don't look like you, or worship the way you do, or don't get their news from the same sources you do. We must end this uncivil war that pits red against blue, rural versus urban, conservative versus liberal. We can do this if we open our souls instead of hardening our hearts. My fellow Americans, in the work ahead of us, we're going to need each other. We need all our strength to persevere through this dark winter. We're entering what may be the toughest and deadliest period of the virus. We must set aside politics and finally face this pandemic as one nation. One nation. And I promise you this, as the Bible says, weeping may endure for a night, but joy cometh in the morning. We will get through this together. Together. Look, folks, all my colleagues I serve with in the House and the Senate up here, we all understand the world is watching all of us today. So here's my message to those beyond our borders. America has been tested, and we've come out stronger for it. We will repair our alliances and engage with the world once again. Not to meet yesterday's challenges, but today's and tomorrow's challenges. And will lead not merely by the example of our power, but by the power of our example. We'll be a strong and trusted partner for peace, progress, and security. Look, you all know we've been through so much in this nation. And my first act as president, I'd like to ask you to join me in a moment of silent prayer. Remember all of those who we lost in this past year to the pandemic. Those 400,000 fellow Americans, moms, dads, husbands, wives, sons, daughters, friends, neighbors, and co-workers. We'll honor them by becoming the people and the nation we know we can and should be. So I ask you, let's say a silent prayer for those who've lost their lives and those left behind, and for our country. Amen. Folks, this is a time of testing. We face an attack on our democracy and on truth, a raging virus, growing inequity, the sting of systemic racism, a climate in crisis, America's role in the world. Any one of these would be enough to challenge us in profound ways. But the fact is, we face them all at once, presenting this nation with one of the gravest responsibilities we've had. Now we're going to be tested. Are we going to step up, all of us? It's time for boldness, for there's so much to do. And this is certain. I promise you, we will be judged, you and I, by how we resolve these cascading crises of our era. We will rise to the occasion is the question. Will we master this rare and difficult hour? Will we meet our obligations and pass along a new and better world to our children? I believe we must. I'm sure you do as well. I believe we will. And when we do, we'll write the next great chapter in the history of the United States of America, the American story. A story that might sound something like a song that means a lot to me. It's called American Anthem. There's one verse that stands out, at least for me, and it goes like this. The work and prayers of century have brought us to this day. What shall be our legacy? What will our children say? Let me know in my heart when my days are through. America, America, I gave my best to you. Let's us add our own work and prayers to the unfolding story of our great nation. If we do this, then when our days are through, our children and our children's children will say of us, they gave their best, they did their duty, they healed a broken land. My fellow Americans, I close the day where I began, with the sacred oath. Before God and all of you, I give you my word. I will always level with you. I will defend the Constitution. I'll defend our democracy. I'll defend America. And I'll give all of you, keep everything I do in your service, thinking not of power, but of possibilities, not of personal interest, but the public good. And together, we shall write an American story of hope, not fear, of unity, not division, of light, not darkness, a story of decency and dignity, love and healing, greatness and goodness. May this be the story that guides us, the story that inspires us, and the story that tells ages yet to come that we answered the call of history. We met the moment. Democracy and hope, truth and justice did not die on our watch but thrived. That America secured liberty at home and stood once again as a beacon to the world. That is what we owe our forebears, one another, and generation to follow. So, with purpose and resolve, we turn to those tasks of our time, sustained by faith, driven by conviction, and devoted to one another and the country we love with all our hearts. May God bless America, and may God protect our troops. Thank you, America.
Before taking office, Joe Biden laid out a set of executive orders he will issue aimed at rolling back some of the most controversial actions of the Trump administration. He will also propose spending nearly $2 trillion to boost the economy and combat the coronavirus pandemic. Susan Page is the Washington bureau chief for USA Today, and she has covered 6 White House administrations. We talked about the challenges facing the new Biden administration.
You know, Greta, it's true that every new president has challenges, but Joe Biden has more challenges, I think it's fair to say, than any president in modern times. And that starts with the pandemic that is still not under control now. More than 400,000 Americans have died. The vaccine rollout, which we're all grateful it started, but it's had a lot of bumps. He's got the economic consequences of that pandemic. Millions of Americans still out of work, some of them at risk of eviction and hunger. And he also has a really divided nation, which was exhibited to our horror by the January 6th assault on the Capitol.
Well, you talk about divide. I'll take that one first. Is the theme of his inauguration speech was unity. How does he achieve unity with 74 million people who wanted the other guy, wanted President Trump reelected?
You know, his challenge is even greater than all those Americans who voted for the other guy. He takes office in a situation where about a third of Americans don't believe he actually won the election. That, of course, is an argument that President Trump made, former President Trump now made, without evidence since the election was held in November. So that's a special burden for Joe Biden. He handled it in his speech today the same way he's been handling it for some time during his campaign and since his election. And that is by saying, I want to be president of all the people. I want to be president of Americans, whether they supported me or not. He's really making an appeal to people on the other side. And that's not a thing every leader has done in the recent past. We'll see if it works.
I think many people would describe President Biden, prior to now, he's vice president and senator, as a moderate. And he now has within his own party, as you noted, some people farther to the left of him. He has made promises to them. And so, it does suggest to me that it's going to be a heavy lift to try to get all his Democrats on one page.
Yeah, of course, he's moved a little to the left, as has his party. He is a more liberal politician than he was, say, at the point Obama chose him as his vice president. But he does have centrist instincts. It's almost like whatever you think about the policy, his personal approach is one that comes across as centrist, as can't we make a deal? Can't we find some common ground here? He has made several appointments. Some progressives are disappointed with the appointments he's made. Bernie Sanders, who was the progressive candidate for president, did not get a cabinet post as he wished. But he has appointed a lot of progressive voices, especially to second and third tier positions in agencies.
Many countries around the world have had women as their leaders. The United States has not, but we have now a woman vice president for the very first time. What do you think her impact will be?
Huge, I think. Just the fact that glass ceiling has finally been broken, I think, is an important message to women and girls in this country. It's interesting, Greta. We have, of course, never had a female president. We now have another male president, but the number 2 in line of succession is a female, our first female vice president. Number 3 in line of succession is the House Speaker, Nancy Pelosi, the first woman ever to become Speaker of the House. So you do see progress being made. Number of women in Congress has gone up. And it was interesting in our November election, the number of Republican women in Congress went up. The Republican gains were by and large made by female challenger candidates. So we may see these things happening in both our parties.
Susan, thank you very much. Always nice to talk to you.
Greta, thank you.
Before Biden took the oath of office, Kamala Harris was sworn in as the new vice president. Harris is the first woman and first person of color to be U.S. vice president. She was a first-term senator from the state of California. Before that, she was California's attorney general. Harris attended Howard University, a prestigious historically black college in Washington, D.C. She earned a law degree at the University of California. The inauguration of a new president is accompanied by a trove of traditions, many of which are missing from this inauguration because of COVID and because of the state of alert due to the recent attack on the U.S. Capitol. Capricia Marshall was the White House Chief of Protocol during the first 4 years of the Obama administration. We talked about the logistics and protocols for this moment.
By this time, during a normal, inauguration, boy, oh boy, the streets would be packed, the hotels would be filled. You couldn't get a restaurant reservation, but regrettably, due to our COVID restrictions, which of course we need to adhere to, and then the recent events of just a couple weeks ago, there is a serious lockdown here in Washington, D.C. It is very unusual, and I have to say it's really disconcerting. I go on walks down and around the monuments on weekends. I couldn't do it. It was all blocked off. You could only get so far. And then you just see these high fences. You see this military presence. I mean, strong military presence. And they're not hiding their weaponry either. It is meant to deter. I'm glad it's deterring. I'm so happy it's keeping people safe. But it saddens me that we needed that. It saddens me because it is so contrary to what we stand for as a nation, to what our democracy stands for. This should be a peaceful time of transition. I have to really tip a hat to the inauguration committee that has put together just several days of true celebrations. They have just reconfigured how the country can experience, and perhaps even more people now experience, the celebration of Joe Biden taking the oath of office. The mall has exquisite flags that have been outlined there. The decor is just grand and certainly fitting of the occasion. The programming from moment to moment that anyone in America can tune into will be full of the showcasing the best of our country, the best artisans, the best poets, the best speakers, politicians, just extraordinary individuals. So I'm really in awe of what they did in a short period of time, because you do have to remember that the transition time was really condensed. Usually, as you note, Greta, the sitting president attends the inauguration with the First Lady, and then they walk with the newly inaugurated President and First Lady down the steps. There is a handshake that takes place. Again, these bridging moments of transition, this showcase to the world that our democracy works, that it is strong, it is powerful. These are really some important symbolic moments that we are missing out on because of his decision not to attend this inauguration, because of his decision not to go through these moments in history. And actually, Greta, I have to say, I think for him himself, he's missing these moments in the history books. These are moments that when your children go back and they look them up, when they Google them, that they will see the conference, the transition of power, this peaceful transition take place, and he won't be there. I just think it was not well thought out when it comes to his perspective years from now. But that's the way that it works. And I look forward to January 21st to see how much President Biden and Vice President, historic figure, Kamala Harris, will get done for our great nation. I know that they will do what they intend to do at this inauguration and unite us as a country again.
That's all the time we have for now. Thank you to my guest, former Chief of Protocol Capricia Marshall, and USA Today's Susan Page. Stay up to date on the latest news at voanews.com. And don't forget to follow me on Twitter @Greta. Thank you for being plugged in.